I always thought we were solid, not perfect. No one is, but real. We laughed, traveled, fought, made up, and built a life we were proud of. That's why I didn't see it coming. The text messages, the flirtatious posts, the secret phone calls. All part of a prank, he said. But the damage was real. It started innocently, or so he claimed. My husband, Mark, had seen a trend online where people staged fake affairs to see how their partners would react. He said it was just curiosity. He enlisted a friend of a friend to pose as his affair partner. They exchanged flirty texts. He left his phone out more often. He started going out late, even applying a bit more cologne than usual. All under the excuse of testing me. I noticed, of course I did. I'm not blind. I'm his wife. I asked him directly, "Is there someone else?" He laughed it off, hugged me, and said, "You watch too many dramas." But the distance between us was no joke. He stopped holding me like before. His eyes wandered more. The warmth we had started fading fast. Then came the breaking point. I found a message on his phone that wasn't scripted. Something raw, something real. She had texted him. "This prank's been going on too long. Are you sure she's the only one you're fooling?" It wasn't a test anymore. Or maybe it never was. Maybe it was just an excuse to flirt with the idea of someone else while still having me at home. I confronted him. He confessed, but not to cheating, just to entertaining the fantasy. He said, "I never crossed the line." But by then, the line didn't matter. He had played with my trust like it was a toy. I wasn't angry. I was hollow. I realized how quickly love turns into performance, and how fragile commitment becomes when it's treated like a game. We tried therapy, but I couldn't forget the way he looked at her texts. How he lied so naturally. I wasn't paranoid. I was played. In time, I left, not because he cheated in the traditional sense, but because he emotionally abandoned me and blamed it on a prank. He called me overreactive. But here's what I know now. You don't need to sleep with someone else to betray the one you love. All it takes is for someone to test love like it's a game, and forget that real love doesn't need testing. It needs trust. It wasn't the messages themselves that broke me. It was the fact that he thought it was okay to make me question my sanity just to prove a point. I still remember the look on his face when I first asked if something was going on. That half smirk, that "you're crazy" shrug it made me feel small, like I was paranoid, like I couldn't trust my own instincts. And the worst part, that was his plan. He wanted me to doubt myself so he could pat himself on the back for being faithful. But there was nothing noble about orchestrating a lie and then watching me unravel in it. People say cheating is about physical boundaries being crossed, but emotional sabotage is just as cruel. When you stage a betrayal, when you intentionally plant seeds of suspicion, you're not testing love. You're tearing it down to see how much of it still stands afterward. Mark didn't sleep with anyone else, but he emotionally left me alone in a battlefield of his own making. Every moment I spent questioning myself, wondering if I was enough, crying in silence so he wouldn't see. It was real. That pain wasn't a joke to me. It wasn't a social experiment. It was trauma wrapped in a disguise of humor. He told me later that he just wanted to see if I would stay loyal, that he needed to be sure I was with him for the right reasons. But I had already proven my loyalty 1,000 times over. When I supported him through job loss, when I forgave his distant moods, when I chose him every single day, even when I was exhausted from carrying the emotional weight of our relationship. And yet, somehow, he decided he had the right to question me, to trick me, to put me in a situation where the very foundation of our relationship, trust, was thrown under a microscope, not out of care, but out of fear and ego. I think that's what people miss when they romanticize these loyalty tests. They assume love should come with checkpoints and traps, but real love doesn't operate like that. You don't booby trap affection. You nurture it, you protect it, you speak into it with honesty and clarity. You don't lie to someone and then measure how well they take it. That's manipulation, not commitment. And Mark didn't just test me. He tested our future. He gambled the intimacy we had built for years on a game that proved nothing, except how little he trusted me and how little he trusted himself. What hurt even more was realizing how calculated it was. The late-night phone calls, the new cologne, the sudden secrecy. It wasn't a slip. It was choreographed. He spent days pretending to be unfaithful, while I spent nights wondering what I did wrong. The emotional dissonance that creates is so hard to explain unless you've felt it. You're not just confused, you're gaslit. You start questioning every memory, every kiss, every smile. Was it ever real, or was I just living inside his test the whole time? I think a lot of women would understand this pain, not because their partners cheated, but because they were made to feel like they could be cheated on at any second. That constant pressure to prove yourself worthy. It's like living with a sword hanging above your head, held by a thread of insecurity, and when that thread snaps, when the person you trusted uses your vulnerability against you, it doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your ability to believe in love the way you once did. What he called a joke became the dividing line between who I was and who I became after. I used to be confident, playful, open, but after that test, I became guarded, suspicious, quietly anxious. I started watching for signs in every relationship, not because I wanted to, but because someone taught me that love comes with traps, that even the people who claim they love you can hide behind games. He never understood why I couldn't just laugh about it. But you can't laugh when someone uses your emotions like a science experiment. You can't laugh when your loyalty is treated like entertainment. What he broke wasn't just trust, it was safety. And once that's gone, the rest slowly follows. I started noticing it before the so-called prank even began. Small shifts in how he spoke to me, the way his eyes didn't linger on mine like they used to, how his phone always faced downward on the table. He became more polished, more careful, and oddly more distant, like he was rehearsing for a role he hadn't told me about. I kept brushing it off, blaming it on stress or work, but there was a silence between us growing louder every night. I'd lay next to him, inches apart, but I couldn't feel him anymore. His body was there, but his mind and soul weren't. It's ironic now how he tried to test my loyalty, when in reality he had already checked out emotionally. Not in one grand moment, but in a series of little abandonments, forgetting to ask how my day was, not texting when he knew I was struggling with my anxiety, turning away from our late-night talks and turning toward the cold blue light of his screen. These were not random behaviors. They were quiet exits, subtle ways he was pulling away before I even knew I was being left behind. I tried harder, of course. I think every woman in love does that when she senses her partner is drifting. I planned dinners, asked about his projects, even sent him spontaneous texts during the day telling him I loved him. Most of the time, he replied with a thumbs up or a half-hearted you too. I kept making emotional bids, and he kept closing the window, little by little. What I didn't know then was that his emotional walls weren't a reaction to anything I had done. They were preparation for the game he was about to play. When he finally told me it was just a prank, that all the suspicious behavior had been intentional, part of his plan to see how I'd react, I didn't feel relief. I felt something worse, emptiness, because what do you do when you realize the distance wasn't accidental? That the man you love didn't just grow apart from you. He designed that distance to study you from it. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was a variable in his twisted little experiment. He watched me lose sleep. He watched me overanalyze texts and question myself. And he kept going, just to see if I'd crack. But here's the truth he never admitted. The prank gave him permission to explore emotional intimacy with someone else under the illusion of a harmless joke. That woman, the one who helped him with the setup, he started confiding in her, laughing with her, calling her late at night for planning purposes. I saw the name on his screen and remembered when it used to be my name lighting it up at midnight. That emotional connection he built wasn't fake. It may have started as an act, but the look in his eyes when I mentioned her told me everything. He had already crossed the line, maybe not with his body, but definitely with his heart. Emotional infidelity is harder to prove, harder to explain. People think if there's no sex, it doesn't count. But it counts. It counts when he shares his dreams with her and not with me. When he tells her his frustrations before he tells me. When he laughs more freely with her than he has with me in months. Emotional detachment starts slowly, like erosion. And by the time you realize what's happening, it's already carved a canyon between you. The night I confronted him, I wasn't angry. I was defeated. I asked him, not as a wife, but as a human being, "Why did you need to test me?" His answer was a shrug. "I don't know. I guess I just needed to feel something." That broke me more than any affair could have. Because what he really meant was, I was already gone before you noticed I was leaving. It took me a long time to stop blaming myself. I kept replaying our last few months, trying to find where I went wrong, what I missed. But the truth is, you can't compete with someone who's already decided to emotionally disappear. You can't save a relationship when one person is studying it like a lab experiment instead of living inside it with you. And you can't heal from betrayal if the person who hurt you refuses to admit that even emotional cheating leaves scars. He left me long before the prank started. I just didn't know it until I saw how easily he could play pretend while I was breaking in real time.